Okay, last summer, I was walking from my Airbnb in Brno and spotted what I knew to be a cultural icon. A pink tank I had only ever heard about had been installed in front of the Red Church at the end of Husova Street. It was really trippy. The Soviet tank, as most of you probably know better than I do, had played its part symbolically and had become a monument to Soviet tank crews displayed as a military memorial in Prague. It was subsequently disassociated from that original emancipatory meaning of it, and it had come to signify the Soviet occupation in the post-Prague Spring years of normalization. And in 1991, the then 23-year-old art student David Černý and his friends painted the tank pink. Born in normalization Prague in 1967, Černý is witness to the normalization and then subsequently the Velvet Revolution. An internationally renowned artist, sometimes described as an enfant terrible, has works that have inspired outrage, admiration, vertigo. They can provoke trenchant political critique and trigger whimsy. Their public display, yes, see? Thank you for that. Their public display transforms the streets, the plazas, and pedestrian malls into a living gallery of controversy. And if I remember correctly from Tomáš Sedláček's talk yesterday, he referred to art as a splinter in the brain. That is what art is supposed to do. There are the uncanny giant babies crawling outside of the Kampa Park, the babies climbing up the television tower, the huge rotating Kafka head, a personal favorite, that we heard about in the previous talk, and is located near the office building where apparently Kafka worked as a clerk at the insurance company. He had a day job. Some works seem to come from a place of anger, so others take the viewer to a place of joy, danger, I think of the hanging statue here, or absurdity, or all of the above. I think according to public relations types, they would say that David's work has polarity. But when I got closer to that tank last summer evening, I overheard people arguing about the irreverence of the color pink, the joy in giving a tank new meaning as a sculpture, the attempts, some of them futile, to paint it back to military green. There was, of course, one of those attempts shortly after David had been arrested for painting it pink. Some of those attempts failed because they used acrylics and washed away the green, and there was great glee in the Brno streets because that had been a fairly recent event. But there was a sense of joy in the victory of this pink critique being washed away and standing up against the elements and also the political elements. In the layers of paint on that tank are layers of history and layers of controversy. And for all of these reasons and for the discussion that's about to follow, it is a pleasure, perhaps a mixed pleasure, to be welcoming David Černý to our conversation today, and join me in welcoming him. Is that all right? Can I start? I wonder, David, if I could start by asking what I hope doesn't seem to be too obvious a question. You've missed our conversation this week, and we have had some pretty interesting conversations and debates about the role of Prague Spring and the role of normalization, also the role of the Velvet Revolution in a kind of lifting of an artistic censor and lifting of constraints. I know that in previous interviews you've talked about being not a particularly political person, but the public nature of your art does prompt political debate. I wonder if you would comment on that and maybe about the nature of the critique in your work from before 1989, and if and how it has changed afterward.
Okay, well, first thing, I'm very sorry, but I can only hear you very barely when you don't speak to the main microphone, so I see like really terribly and hear.
This one.
You have to speak to this microphone. Sorry for that.
This one. very sorry about that. Everybody else here heard the question but you.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about essentially your relationship to politics and art, and if and how your relationships to making art changed after 1989.
Well, after the end of the revolution, well, first thing, I was a student in art school in that time, so I was not really, artistically active. I end up being imprisoned, but not because of art. I end up being imprisoned because of, taking part of some demonstrations. So I would say that my input to the art world was zero before the end of the communism, or so-called the end of the communism, because now it looks like the communism was actually never ended. But it was more or less probably the reason, or why the communism, or when the communism ended, or after the Belgrade Revolution, the reason why I actually stayed in the country was that. So, and how it's changed. It's changed probably completely in a way, as I said, that I decided not to emigrate, but to stay in the country. So.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the decision not to emigrate and to stay in the country?
Well, yes, I'm still not sure if it was right or wrong. So that's probably what I'm sort of, still thinking about. Because, looking back in what happened, of course, the enthusiasm we had in 90, or well, after 89, it was quite fantastic. And then when I look what's going on in the state, and it's seriously not very satisfying.
I wonder if you could comment on my observation that some of your works seem to come from a place of anger. Is that at all true of, for example, the Andropa piece that was so controversial? Is there a piece in particular that you would characterize as intentionally angry?
Yeah, well, probably the one which was really that was this one. So, yes, it's actually my, if you have a picture of it.
David, I had that, and I wasn't sure if we should put it up, but go ahead and do that again.
Because this is it's my blown up hand, which I put in the middle of the river to show it to the guy who is the president in Prague Castle. Mr. Koníček actually knows him very well. He was serving him for a couple of years. Yes, that terrible pig called Zeman, that was my message to him. So that's really came out of my anger to those pro-Russian assholes who are actually now sitting in the, being, of course, paid by the Russians to actually get there. So that's, yeah, okay. And a couple of others, of course, but this was probably one latest and the major one you want to speak about.
I wonder if you, because wasn't the original pink tank, wasn't there also a similar gesture on the pink tank originally?
No. On Pink Tank it was a bit different, but yes, there was a bit like that small
Really
out fingers.
And who was that directed to?
Well, that was
Not
a
an
sort of,
individual?
it was sort of basically towards the eastern side of the country.
David, I have a question about the pink tank. And when I talked to you this last summer, you had mentioned that you decided to paint the tank pink after a party. You were on the way home with a group of friends, and you decided that you had this inspiration. But one of the things that you said when I talked to you last time, you said that Havel wasn't exactly thrilled that you did it. Can you talk a little bit about that? Why?
I probably can. What I know is that Václav Havel was actually going from the party that night with, I think that he was even with the mayor of Prague, and the guy, who actually was the only one who known that I'm going to do it, he told him. And they went to see it on the way home. They went to see it, but it was too early because that was, we painted early Sunday morning. And I think that they went, or they were driving, passing by after midnight, shortly after midnight. So they haven't seen anything. So he probably, it's, of course, in that time it was a political question if he known about it or not. I think that I probably spoke about it with him later, and yes, I think that he did know that it's going to happen.
I'm going to flip through a couple more images, and I think you can see them.
No,
you can't. Oh, that's right. You can't see them. Well, I'm showing the baby on the broadcasting tower, the babies.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about where these came from? And by the way, David was scheduled to be here. I should tell the audience that he was originally scheduled to be here, but some of his babies, I think there were 10, you said, that were on a cargo vessel that got stuck in Panama on their way to Palm Springs. Which is
those babies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those babies.
David is going to stop through Lincoln on the way to reunite with those babies that were delayed in Panama eventually, probably in September. But can you talk a little bit about these babies? Because this is a major feature in Prague. If you've been to Prague, most people in the room have been to Prague. Where'd they come from?
They're actually now down, because they're actually in the containers on the cargo vessel on the way to California.
These babies, the same ones.
Yeah. Sorry?
Okay, so where did these babies come from?
Well, the first one was babies come. Wait, those were actually.
This isn't the birds and the bees question, but
Yeah, of course. Well, the original one was actually born in New York City. Yeah. And it was meant to be installed in Chicago Museum of Art, Museum of Modern Art, as the part of one exhibition. And then it was sort of traveling around the world. I think that the original one was actually exhibited in Omaha, Nebraska, so very close to Lincoln.
All right.
In 96 or 97, I don't remember exactly, when I was in Omaha. And then, so it was exhibited, well, I don't remember, whatever. After a couple of venues, it's ended the original one, which I actually carved out of the styrofoam in New York, in the Broadway, ended in Prague, and then I was asked to do an installation. So I sort of like reused the idea and put it on the tower, on the Czech TV tower. Mm-hmm. So that was the technical aspect of, or the born time, and I don't really remember exactly what was behind. So.
I'm flipping through some pictures of you for the audience here.
Okay.
The one with the your pilot. David's a pilot, by the way, and that may or may not be your real pilot gear. I'm not really sure what kind of plane you fly, but that's fine. Okay, now I have the photos of the guns. There are 4 guns pointing.
Okay.
Right.
Guns.
Can you explain where this image came from in your mind? What is it?
I don't know which image actually you're using, so
Guns
I can
and
only
babies.
guess. So probably those are those 4 pointing guns against each other. Well, that was sort of a long time ago. Also, I was thinking about the design of the guns and how about the utilitarian of the handguns, because the handgun, you have like rifles which can be or might be theoretically used for hunting or whatever, but the handguns are like poorly used for killing people. So you won't be hunting with the handgun, you basically use it as, of course, it's defense, but even in defense moment, you use it as killing a person. You don't really use, the handgun for killing a lion, because it's like it doesn't make really sense. So I was thinking about the design of the handgun, and this particular one is Beretta, which was used in, as the police gun also in States. So it's I was sort of like focusing on the design, and of course, if you look at the gun, it's what I was interested about, the utilitarian way how to use the gun and how to make design. And then I end up with the idea that you have always sort of like guns which are pointing to each other. So it's about, it's a kind of like abstraction, probably.
Okay. Patty has a question.
That particular sculpture would have a great deal of resonance in the United States right now, but I wanted to shift gears and talk about another sculpture.
Can you speak?
Oh,
I'm
yes,
sorry,
I'm
can you
sorry.
speak to that microphone? Yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
I just wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk about another sculpture that was brought up this morning in a presentation by Maketa Stankiewicz. And it's the Kafka head. It's the rotating, massive Kafka head in what I believe it's the pedestrian mall, like a shopping mall. Could you talk a little bit about some of the artistic decisions that you made in conceptualizing and executing or realizing the Kafka head?
Sure. It was private acquisition or request by the, sort of by the architect and also by the developer of that complex. And it is in the center of Prague, in the street which is called Národní, which means national. And it's very okay. So the place sits on the national street, and also it sits between the city hall and the place where Franz Kafka was actually working as the clerk. So he was the clerk in the insurance company, like 50 meters next by that spot. So it was, when I was thinking about the spot, what that spot is, and also the name of the national street, I was thinking what the nation and what the national aspect of or what is the national aspect of the residents of Prague. And the Prague residents before the Second World War were certainly, like third were Germans, third were Jewish, and the rest were probably Czechs, or it probably wasn't exactly those numbers, but very close. And Kafka as the Czech, supposed to be a Czech writer, but he was German writing. He was, of course, fluently Czech speaking, but he was writing in Czech, in German, and he was Jewish. So he sort of make this essence of the residents of Prague, or what used to be the residents of the Prague. So that's one thing. And of course, in that moment, I I was thinking about what is, and he is the symbol of the Prague, because, you know, there are a zillion jokes about what the Prague is. It's the Kafka city. And so there are a lot of aspects, and I really, you know, beside of many, I enjoy the moment when you go to actually get something cleared in the city hall. You know, and of course, after 3 hours being in a city hall, you get completely confused and like haven't solved anything. So you get out, and then you have the Kafka, you know, rotating, sort of, you know, smiling. So and all those guys, you know, who works in city hall are, you know, watching at the Kafka's head. So it's like also great inspiration for them. So.
I've read that you are very committed to having your work displayed in public, not so much in museums, but in public spaces. Could you just talk a little bit about what you think the role of art is in everyday life in public spaces?
You know, it's probably a very long philosophical question. What is the role of art? I don't know what the hell is the role of art at all. It's probably not what people are getting.
Art in public spaces, then.
Okay, so why I prefer to work on public spaces? It's simply because, you know, if you go to or if you do an art which is meant to be in art devoted space, you can probably do whatever you want, but it's different when you actually exposing the people to some, you know, of your thoughts or ideas or whatever, and you probably have to more deal with what is going to be exhibited or not. So that's and I'm sort of enjoying personally the moment when I can, you know, hit somebody who is not. If you go to the gallery, you're expecting you going to see an art, you know. So you see a dead animal. It's not dead animal. It's an art because it's, you know, you see whatever you see in the gallery is an art. If you do it on the, you know, the open space or public space, you're dealing with the different feelings, and so that's what I'm personally enjoying about it.
Okay, I'm going to ask you about I have on display for the audience. They can see your installation at the EU, the one that you are well known and for doing, and it was a bit of a prank, you might say.
It was a bit prank, yeah.
I asked you where babies came from, so I want to know now where this idea came from, the European Union piece, which is probably one of your most controversial pieces. Can you? And I know the story because you told me this summer, but can you tell the audience a little bit about how this piece came about?
Well, I was seriously asked by the Prime Minister for European Affairs in that time, Alexander Vondra, who was a good friend of Václav Havel also. I was asked when the Czech Republic supposed to have leadership in EU committee. I was asked to do, because it was normal that the leader country had usually some installation in the European, what is it called? The House of Justice, I think it's called, House of Justice. And he asked me if I would be willing to propose something, and I said, okay, I can think about it. So I've been flown to Brussels. I look around. It's like nice space. The hall was kind of cool. So I was thinking about what should fit, and that was the idea, you know. So it was sort of, you know, the assembly. As you mentioned that I was a pilot, and of course, as the child, I was putting together the small airfix kits, you know. Mm-hmm. So and I reused that in 90s as one of my sculptures. So you basically have this like blown up assembly kit, or it has different names. So you see the images, or the image, or I'm not sure. So I reused the idea of something which sort of can be put together or can be assembled or disassembled, because the European Union is a great idea which I seriously supported, and but as we can see now, it's not very clear that everybody actually wants to keep the European Union.
Okay, sorry about that.
So,
we had a technical. Okay, go
can
ahead.
you hear me?
Well, yeah, I can hear you. So
that was behind, So the idea was that let's sort of depict the European in the way that it can be put together or disassembled. So that was the question: is it going to be assembled or disassembled? So you have the kit, you have the. So it was sort of showing, okay, you people have an option to put it together or break it apart. So that was it. That was the first idea. And then I began to, thinking how to do it. And there were like many ways. I even proposed to Alexander that I would, either do it by myself, or maybe I will put it together by, different artists from different countries. There were even an idea that I would actually ask the artists from the neighbor country to do the neighbors, so it would be much, probably funnier than. In the end, I decided with my friends that we will do it, who I invited to collaborate, that we will do it by ourselves. But yes, we kept the sort of as a prank that the countries are going to be actually created by particular artists from particular countries, which was not true. We completely made up all the artists as the fake figures, and we present that they exist. And of course, because those depicting of the countries were in a certain cases pretty controversial, when we were after the unveiling, a lot of politicians of the European countries, including Sarkozy and Merkel and all the leaders, were actually quite hard complaining why we showing them, like Germany with swastikas, and Britain was actually missing, and a couple of things which were a little bit considered to be, not polite enough or whatever. And of course, it was just fun, nothing else. And whatever, some of the countries actually sent official protest notes. So some of the, one of the countries actually had to be official covered. And well, that was the funny part of the whole thing. Does it give sense?
I think it's making a lot of sense. We have a couple of, I think there's like suppressed applause at the moment, so we'll be getting to that in a little while. Maybe we should open it up to questions.
We're opening up the questions,
Okay.
and so we've asked someone from the audience to come and to join in, ask you a question. Someone.
Čau, vole.
Tak tebe jsem chtěl vidět.
Jak to, že jsi nepřišel? Why didn't you come?
Teďko zrovna kalil jsem tam. A teď je voláníčka.
Well, you're missing out great fun. I had the best steak today.
Yes, of course, I know I'm missing great fun, but I had a lot of fun here too.
Okay, I believe that.
It's very nice even today in Kampa.
Don't name her name. Okay, see you later.
So you are the only audience?
Yeah, we planned this all along. It was just Thomas and I and Patty. Anybody who would like to come up and ask David Černý a question? We have time for maybe 2 questions, right? Someone from the audience, please. Someone brave. You have never been ambivalent about coming and asking questions. Okay, go ahead.
No,
What's the question? What's the question?
Next year, so you can save the questions for me being there personally.
What was that?
Question from the audience is, do you see any relationship, or is there a connection between your work and Mauricio Catalan's?
Well, yeah, of course, Catalan stole a couple of my things, so I decided to steal a lot of his.
Okay. Another question? We'll interpret for you.
Mila?
My question goes back to the public art. Do you have involvement by placing your art in the public space of art places, and how do you deal with the perception of officials what public art should be like?
Okay. Question from Mila Saskova-Pierce, who is the honorary consul for the Czech Republic here in the state of Nebraska. She asks about, going back to the question of public art, and whether you have any trouble placing your works in public or with some of the officials' responses to your work. Mila, is that sort of right? Sort of right?
Yeah, well, of course I do have a lot of troubles installing my, I would say that installing anything in public is the most difficult thing on that is not actually making the sculpture, but getting the approval.
Okay.
As with everything, approval and stamp.
The views. And a quick follow-up is, what are the views? Yes, what are the views of the officials?
What? I'm sorry,
Administrators and, or like municipal officials, administrators, mayors, call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, no,
Is it difficult? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. It's weird, but Tomáš knows about it. None of the installations which are around Prague are actually anyhow connected with the municipality, and most of the things which I actually have around Prague are private. There is no one owned by the city, the city hall. No one. So everything is private property or mine property. So it's weird, and everybody's asking, how did you manage to actually get all those things done with the municipality? And I said, I don't work with municipality. So.
Okay. And that answered the question. Should we close it down?
Yeah. Any other questions?
Maybe one more?
One more question?
I think that, basically, I would say most of questions to me, Tomáš can answer with good English.
He's confirming that with a thumbs up.
Yeah.
So. Any other questions? Oh, yes, one more question.
I had a question about Meat Factory, about the venue.
Okay.
The involvement and the program for this year and what's going on.
The Meat Factory. He wants to know about the involvement and the programming for Meat Factory this year. What do you have planned?
Well, Meat Factory is, yes, it is my project, which I've been, I worked on a lot. I spent a lot of time on it. But a while ago, in this moment, the institution works pretty well by itself, and I'm pretty glad with that. I did it because when I came back from New York, I really enjoyed being in PS1, and I decided that we sort of, the city missing an opportunity for foreigner artists to actually, be able to come, see, work, bring some, ideas, bring some, bacterias back.
Well, David, thank you very much. Lincoln, Nebraska, University of Nebraska-Lincoln, thanks you for joining us today, and we will see you sometime
Thank
on
you.
the Rendezvous with the Babies. Thank you very much. Peace out. All right.
Dit is voor de studie nog. Tomaatje nog.
Bye, David. I'll see you this summer.